So in March of 2020, I signed a 5-year lease with a three-room office. And I was the only practitioner at the time. So it was like a kind of like placing a bet on myself. It was like playing roulette, signed it, and then shutdown hit. And I was like, oh no, like this is terrible.
Right.
And at least for me at this point, I'd gotten into eating disorders. And so we were slow for a week, and then it was like very full. And then there was I think it was across the whole country, but I mean, we had a massive skyrocket in adolescent eating disorder cases. So like within a month or two, I had to hire another eating disorder clinician. And then so the pandemic really didn't cause us to pivot very much.
Hello and welcome to RDs Thriving in Private Practice, where we share our collective wisdom about building a nutrition practice and get inspired. I'm Catherine Dittman, and joining me today is Maggy Doherty.
Hello.
Maggy is a registered dietitian based in Dallas, Texas, and the owner of Maggy the Dietitian, where she specializes in eating disorders, sports nutrition, and private practice development. Maggy's passion for nutrition began as a student athlete on UCLA's women's diving team after experiencing stress fractures and learning how nutrition could aid in injury prevention and recovery. This pivotal experience sparked her commitment to helping others and led to the founding of Doherty Nutrition, a national network of dietitians addressing a wide range of nutrition needs. Maggy's approach embraces anti-diet principles, intuitive eating, and health at every size. Using motivational interviewing, she guides clients in rebuilding healthy relationships with food, managing medical conditions, and fueling their bodies effectively. In addition to her client work, Maggy is the founder of the Dietitian Boss Network, a membership and training platform designed to help dietitians build successful private practices. Through this program, Maggy empowers fellow dietitians to take charge of their careers, grow their businesses, and thrive in the nutrition field. Welcome, Maggy.
Hello. Thank you for the introduction.
Yes, and thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
So we'll start out by hearing what your journey has been like as a dietitian, what led you to this specialty, and the population that you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my story of becoming a dietitian just in the first place is I came from a very health conscious family, but in a very positive way. My dad was a doctor, and always kind of approached that like medical nutrition therapy-esque vibe at home. We were all complete foodies. So I always knew I wanted to do something with food. I just didn't know in what aspect. So like I considered being like a wine sommelier. And then I was like, maybe I'll be a restaurant manager. And then I realized I don't like working late or on weekends. And so both of those kind of were crossed out. And I was a diver at UCLA, and, I love my school. I love my sport. And they always say, it's student athlete, student first, and then athlete. But in reality, when you're a Division I athlete, like it really is athlete and then student. So I got my Bachelor of Arts in Communications, which was great. I got a minor in urban planning, which I don't think I've done anything with. And it was like the day after I finished my last day of practice, the end of my season, I was like, oh, I want to become a dietitian. I was like, shoot, I got a Bachelor of Arts. I need a Bachelor of Science. And like, I didn't take any courses. So I ended up kind of moving back home, going to community college, fast tracking, finding a coordinated program. So that's kind of what led me to being a dietitian. And during my time at UCLA, as you mentioned earlier, I just had stress fractures all over my body. And we didn't know if it was from nutrition, if there was something in my blood work, my lab work, my family history. And through that process, I met the sports dietitian at UCLA. And the first time I met with her, I ran back to my teammates and I said, guys, the dietitian is so cool. I had so much fun with her. And they were like, what? And it was just really in that moment when people were like, you think the dietitian was cool? When I realized that there was something that I was very passionate about there.
Yeah, That is such a great point that you're making, because I think that that initial point of contact that a non-dietitian has with a dietitian can really inform how we view the profession as a whole.
Mhm.
And so it's sort of, a PSA to all of us. It's incumbent on all of us to represent our field pretty well and make that warm, friendly initial point of contact. So,
Yeah.
that little sort of inspiration kind of lit that fire for you. You
Mhm.
went and you
Yeah.
found a coordinated program. Yeah, awesome, great. And so, did you know that you wanted to open a private practice right away, or how did that set of decisions eventually start getting made that led you to start Doherty?
I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I've loved kind of doing the beat of my own drum, doing things when I want, why I want, how I want. And that doesn't always work really well in corporate America.
Mhm.
But when I was in grad school, I always did these like side projects. So I did social media for like a coffee, like a coffee shop. I started my own blog. I would get like peanut butter shipped to my house or my apartment, and then I would write reviews. So I always did these like weird odds and ends. And then in grad school, in our last year for our rotations, I ended up doing a sports nutrition internship at UIC, University of Illinois at Chicago. And they were Division 3 and didn't have a sports dietitian. And so, really, as interns, we got to be the entire athletic department sports dietitians as interns because that was the best they had. And I was so in love with it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can create a job. And so I ended up creating this whole business proposal for the athletic director. I'm like pitching, hey, create this role. Here's what I can do. Here's like what your athletes have already said. And I had this big kind of like business board meeting while I was still in grad school to like create this position. And long story short, the school didn't have any funds at all. I think they were like, it wasn't there financially. So I think that's when I realized like I really wanted to create my own thing, but then I kind of got met with this rejection. And so then I started my kind of first job as a clinical dietitian.
Mhm. So you got some clinical experience, and then so from what I've learned about you so far, and please fill in any gaps, it sounds like Doherty Nutrition had a pretty large team of dietitians that you built over time.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
So
kind of the
let's
same story in
hear.
grad school. When I was a clinical dietitian, I always kind of dabbled on the side. So I was on Upwork before I feel like Upwork was a thing. And so
Mhm,
I was consulting, I was doing nutrition gigs on the side. And then I ended up getting a gig on Upwork for a couple $1,000s. I think it was for like RD pocket prep. And it was writing all of the dietitian exam test prep questions. And at that point, I was like, wow, I have like a couple paychecks just from this project where if I start a private practice, like I have guaranteed income.
mm,
And so it took me about a year of just like slowly building my practice on the side, like doing all the things that cost time, but maybe not a lot of money. So like filing for the LLC, looking up insurance panels, getting a network, getting the bank account, the email, the website. So I did that all on the back burner. And then in May of 2019 is when I made that launch and I kind of stepped into my private practice of where Doherty Nutrition really started. It was, May of 2019 with me, myself, and I.
mhm, mhm. Okay. And so, spoiler, that was the year before the pandemic. What happened during that year? Was that a year of growth? Was that a year of pivot? What happened that year?
Yeah. So, my gosh, I feel like I'm talking like ancient years ago, but like
Yeah.
2019 really wasn't that long ago. But I feel like the pandemic just aged us all.
Mhm,
But I decided to accept health insurance and I decided to figure it out on my own, credential myself, bill myself, really learn it all. And there weren't a ton of dietitians in the North Texas, Dallas area that were accepting insurance. And so I got full really, really quickly. And so then I ended up hiring my girlfriends from the hospital and they came over and then they got full. And then I was working at like I don't know, like a shared office space where like I'd rent by the hour and then I'd rent by the day and then I rented by the week and then by the month. And then I was like having 3 dietitians in one office in a day. And I'm like, I think I need more office space. So in March of 2020, I signed a 5-year lease with a three-room office, and I was the only practitioner at the time. So it was like a kind of like placing a bet on myself. It was like playing roulette. Signed it and then shut down hit. And I was like, oh no, like this is terrible.
Right.
And at least for me at this point, I'd gotten into eating disorders. And so we were slow for a week, and then it was like very full. And then there was I think it was across the whole country, but I mean, we had a massive skyrocket in adolescent eating disorder cases. So like within a month or two, I had to hire another eating disorder clinician. And then so we got, the pandemic really didn't cause us to pivot very much. Yeah, we went from, being in office and seeing people 5 days a week to then, once or twice, but also, we saw insurance pivot, where before the pandemic, I didn't have anyone virtual because it wasn't covered. And so I think with the shift of eating disorder cases increasing and then insurance coverage getting more lax and increasing, it didn't harm our industry and our practice.
Right, right. So there are some unforeseen circumstances, and also, for some of us in nutrition practices, especially if we were treating eating disorders, the pandemic was kind of right time, right place if you were ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I wasn't ready, but it was, like a crash course, get your teeth kicked in, like for a year of like, before that, I didn't do adolescent eating disorders. And then it's like, well, there's no other adolescent eating disorder dietitians in this area that accept insurance. So it's just like this line of people. So I learned more that year than ever in terms of nutrition counseling skills, for sure.
Okay. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about, so what I'm sort of picking up on a lot of times when we do these interviews and people are sort of on the other side of their, trials and tribulations. And so we kind of gloss over the hard stuff. Would you be
Let's get
willing to
into it.
talk about the struggles that you encountered and maybe how that affected you emotionally, maybe some of the financial risks, things you had to learn? Did you find help? Did you need to say, hey, I don't really know how to effectively run a healthy business, I need to find someone? What did you do?
Yeah. Hindsight is, I feel like, the most beautiful lesson that you can learn and look back. And as long, my philosophy, I say this with clients and all of my clinicians that I coach as well. If you made a mistake, as long as you learn from something from it, like it's not like, as long as you got something from it, if you keep making the same mistake and you're not learning, like then it's a mistake. But yeah, as I look back, gosh, I think the two biggest mistakes was, one, when I started, I'm a very, very friendly person, and I wasn't sure how to interview people. So I'm like, let me skip the interview and I'll just hire all my friends. And so hired my friends from the hospital, hired my friends from grad school, hired my first employee, became friends. And so we had this super cool culture where like everyone actually was friends first. And so it was very friendly. It was very welcoming. We hung out on the weekends. We didn't talk about work when we weren't together. But then when performance issues came up and clients were maybe writing negative reviews on Google, or there was really low retention, I didn't have the management or the leadership skills to coach someone up. And then on top of that, you add that lack of experience of me as a leader, and then you compound it with a friendship. And so then it'd be like, hey, you're doing so good, but like, could you do like a little bit better here? But you're doing a great job though. But just like, and so my management was not very effective. I would really glass stuff over. One thing I've learned in therapy myself is a lot of times in the past, I'll try to keep the peace to prolong conflict, where really it just kind of like, it's like a bungee where it's going to catch up. And so it caught up. And so there was a couple tiffs that my friends and coworkers got on that, damaged the friendship because there was that lack of boundaries. And then as we pulled out at the second is my husband, when I was at Doherty Nutrition, we were in business together, and there was a big lack of boundaries on both of our ends. We had never worked with a husband, a past husband or wife before. And it became really this like gray area. It was like, where does the relationship start and end, and where does the business start and end? And then you also compound, because he was my husband and they were my friends, that then they were friends. And so then it just kind of got complicated. And it's like, if I were to change things, I'd be like, there, if I would have known there was pros and cons and maybe had a business coach before, or a friend who had gone in business with friends or a partner before, I think that would have been really helpful. I think looking back, I still would have done it because, like, it'll be fine. But that was a big learning lesson. And kind of where I'm at now, I'm like, hey, if I just work with myself, I can only, piss off myself and I can only, step over my own boundaries. So what I tell a lot of my clinicians or my clients or anyone is, getting into like a family or couples type of therapy, whether you're a couple or not, like even with your business partner, can be so, so helpful and productive to manage those boundaries and and preserve that relationship.
Yeah. Right, right. So what I'm hearing you say, it's not don't hire your friends, don't go into business with your partner. It's that if you choose to do so, then there are certain considerations and boundaries and expectations that really need to be made clear up front in order
Yeah. Yeah. And I
for
think boundaries being
preserve
like
the
the
outfit.
number one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing. So you built this business. It sounds like it was, really a thriving business. And at some point, you have decided to take a step back and really focus on your own solo enterprise and your business mentorship for other dietitians. So tell me about that decision to take a step back from Doherty Nutrition.
Yeah, it was a tough one. And it's taken me, gosh, so I started my new practice back in May. So I guess 5 months for me to even be able to like talk about it publicly without like crying or like being afraid of saying the wrong thing. And
Mm,
really, as I look back at it, so back in 2022, I had my first daughter.
mm,
And that was also a big shift when I came back to Doherty Nutrition, and there was so much really like pressure from coaching clinicians and promotions and growth strategies and finances where, I'd finish the workday and I'd be exhausted. And like I wouldn't want to spend time with my daughter. I just want to lay down. And like at that moment, I'm like, there's a disconnect between my values and like family and my daughter, number one. And yes, I love work, but like work was taking away from that number one value for me. So that was one part of my decision. And then the other part is, as you've kind of heard some stories, like I am an entrepreneur, like I get like my fix from being creative. I've built both of my websites in hand with a website designer. Most of my handouts and my branding, I just really flourish in that creativity field. And as we grew at Doherty Nutrition, I feel like I lost that entrepreneur part where, okay, now the clients I was seeing, they were going to my full-time dietitians who needed those clients. And then my marketing went to our marketing person. And then my website skills that I was doing went to our, website, company. And then kind of all of the things that really filled me up got outsourced. And
mhm,
so then I was stuck kind of doing things that didn't fill me up.
mhm,
Um, and so I was trying to figure out why, like, I just had this lack of passion and like spark. And I'm like, gosh, I'm not like an entrepreneur. Like, I kind of feel like almost an employee again, where everyone knew what my schedule was. There was meetings on my calendar every time. And I just kind of felt like I was back in this corporate position
mhm,
where as I took this step in this trial of Maggy the dietitian, and I have been so happy where I adore Doherty Nutrition. I adore what we've done there. I love all the clinicians there. I love all the clients. But for me, where I really thrive is when I am kind of functioning on my own and there's not this chain of command to, if I want to make a change to the website, like I can do it because it's my business. And it was like, I remember I wanted to change something on the website. I was like, well, Maggie, did you ask this person? And I'm like, it's my company. Can I just change the website?
right.
And so I just realized like I really thrive better at an entrepreneur spot. And that was kind of my journey and like realizing like, wow, I really did make the right choice. Like I'm happier here and being able to still use that platform of Doherty Nutrition for, resources and for support and having that there. And I'm still an owner. So I just don't really work within it anymore.
Mhm, mhm. Well, sort of one different perspective that's a positive is that one sign of a healthy business is when we can replace ourselves so that we're not really necessary there. And so you've successfully done that. But as
Mhm.
you're describing, the consequence of that is that you may not feel as valuable towards the, like you built this thing, but you no longer feel like you have a place there. And
Yeah, and
so
there's
then, yeah,
uh-huh.
then finding a project that's just yours can be more fulfilling, right? And so that
Mhm.
sort of does seem like that entrepreneurial instinct where you hear about entrepreneurs, they build something and then they step away, and they go to another one, they build that and they step away, right? So that's a pretty predictable pattern that you've found yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, "Huh, I guess I did follow that." And, it's crazy, a lot of the dietitians I coach are like, "Oh my gosh, Maggie, I wanna do exactly what you did. Like, that is so cool that you started practicing, now, like, you left." And I'll tell them, like, "Hey, don't always judge a book by a cover." Like, from the outside, yeah, it looks like, "Oh my gosh, she grew this good practice, and then she, started another one." I'm like, there's so much that you don't see and that you don't know that, like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. And there was a lot of tears and therapy and like damage that had happened, in different type of relationships to where I don't really know if it was. I mean, you can never look back and say it was worth it or did I make a mistake. I mean, everything does. Looking back now, I know everything happens for a reason, but it's a really weird feeling too when you're like, I'm replaceable. And for some people, it's like, cool, I did it. And others, I'm like, I don't wanna be replaceable. Like, I wanna you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a crazy concept, and especially as you go through it yourself, which I know a lot of, dietitian owners who've been further along have been in my same shoes.
Mhm, mhm. So you're a mom and you have a life, right? How many hours per week on average do you think you spend actually working, like really in it?
It's such a good question. Full disclosure, I'm just, like, in a lot of personal stuff right now, so I'm really not able to give my full energy and attention to business stuff because 'cause I'm being pulled in some personal stuff right now. So, right now, I mean, it's hard to say, but I mean, I would say right now about 20 hours. So it's not a ton, but I really don't have the capacity to do any more of that. It's this balance where I was literally telling my therapist this morning. When I'm sitting with a nutrition counseling client or I'm sitting with a dietitian coaching them, I am like fully in it. I'm focused, I'm exhilarated, I'm fulfilled. I'm so happy to be helping them. I'm so happy that they feel like they're being helped. And then I finish the session, I'm like, and so I'm like couch potatoes afterwards. And so it's kind of this dynamic where I really, really want to get my new practice full and busy because I know that really does make me happy. But then when I'm not in those sessions and I need to be doing like the marketing to build it up, it's like,
Mhm.
or I could just lay on the couch. I
Yeah.
could go hang out with my daughter. And so it's kind of this dynamic where right now I'm trying to be appreciative of even though I'm not as full as I wish I was, and it's a lot harder when there's not insurance on the table. Like this is taking me way longer to get full than the first round. So it's like also comparing myself to my first practice is really tough because I'm like, gosh, I knew way less then and now I'm slower to get full, but I realize it's the dynamic of okay, one was a totally different business. Like I'm doing something totally different. So trying to sit in this spot where I'm not where I wanna be, but I'm not gonna force it. If my energy's already low, I'm not gonna, keep drinking coffee and push myself to do all this marketing. We're just like, take it and like it will come, and it'll get there.
Mhm. So can we talk a little bit about some of these differences in having an insurance-based practice versus a cash practice now that you have familiarity with both?
Mhm. Yeah. I love personally having the experience on both, but because before I started private pay, I could just, talk from what I heard from others. But yeah, so I mean, really two different business models completely. So as you look at insurance, you typically are going to get full faster because more people are going to be wanting to use their insurance benefits. Nutrition counseling is typically covered pretty awesome. You get free marketing on all of the insurance panels. Um, and then you don't set your rates. Insurance determines what you get paid, whether you like it or not. On the flip side, self-pay, it's harder to get full because you don't have this free marketing on insurance websites. You're asking people to pay out of pocket for your services that could be covered by insurance. So it's like, why should I see this dietitian who self-pay versus this one? So like you have to have a skill or be in a location that warrants getting paid out of pocket for.
Mhm.
And then the third part is you can set your own rates. So I could charge $1,000, 500. I could charge different rates to, different people. I don't know if that'd really be ethical, but so there's these differences. And so for me, as I started this new practice, I know that I love counseling clients, but it's not what I want to do full time. And so part of that decision to go private pay was I don't want to get a full schedule of
Mhm.
clients. I
Mhm.
also know that accepting insurance, it's like 25% of your total hours for the week at minimum. And I'm like, I don't want to do the billing, the credentialing. Like I've been there, done that already. Like I want to see a client, see a dietitian, charge the card, be done. And so saving myself the cost of having to hire an admin. Um, and the other part is I'm still in the same area as Doherty Nutrition. And so if I were to accept insurance, I'm essentially like competing against my other company where I'm just taking money out of my own pocket.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
like that didn't make sense. So that was kind of my decision for it. And so anytime I have a client who's like, hey Maggie, I want to work with you, I'm like, hey, cool. Here's private pay. Here's what to know. If you don't want that, go down the street and here's my other practice. And so I like this balance where I feel like it's very symbiotic and I didn't want to create like this type of competition where it wouldn't benefit either of my companies to do so.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you provide any sort of value added service in your private that you wouldn't necessarily for insurance based? Do they get some extra bells and whistles, or is it the exact same service, but it's just private pay?
Um, I think one thing I guess it's kind of hard to admit, but I feel like I'm actually a much better practitioner in the self-pay setting. I'm a lot more invested. The
Mhm.
clients are a lot more invested, which I was not expecting. Everyone shows up on time. They cancel
Mhm.
24 hours in advance. They're taking notes.
Mhm.
And so really the quality of client is a lot different, which
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting that either. And so when the client's showing up, the clinician's going to even show up more. So and my rates are higher than insurance. So I'm making more than if I would be staying some from insurance. So
Mhm.
I'm a little bit more willing to, do emails outside a session or this or that. But easy way to answer your question. No, there's not really a value add. I specialize in eating disorders, sports nutrition. So yeah, there's some, more prescriptive or kind of resources they'll get there. So it may be harder to find like an eating disorder and sports dietitian. But again, if like someone just needs sports or eating disorder, I'm like, hey, go to my group practice. But if you need eating disorder and sports, like you may have to pay out of pocket to get that combination.
Mhm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So really kind of marrying both of those specialties is kind of giving that extra value to it just
Yeah.
inherently. Okay.
Hmm.
So in the interest of us getting to the end of our time, let's hear about how you mentor people. What if someone wanted to work with you or was interested in talking about your mentorship program, what would they find in the program? How can you help?
Yeah. My whole approach is like very like authentic and very truthful. And I speak from like, hey, here's where I totally screwed up. And here's what I would do differently. So the dietitians I coach are typically in a spot that they have a mid-sized group practice and they want to get to the size of Doherty Nutrition,
Mhm.
or it's someone who's just starting out and they know that I've started a practice and done it once and coaching them how. But I feel like what kind of makes my business coaching a little bit different than some others is really bringing forward like, hey, this is my lived experience, like what actually happened in the past 5 years. And here's all my research. Let me hold your hand and go through this with you. And because I'm so eager to build up a practice of clinicians and build up this program, a lot of my costs are like way lower than you'd see from pretty much any business coach, which really is like I know that the information, the value that I have is so impactful. It's like I really want to get it out there and show people, and then I'll raise my prices later. But
Sure.
really now it's just like it brings me so much joy to be doing that. So I ended up creating a lot of stuff in my new practice. I'm like, let me throw a couple ideas out there and just like see what happens. And so when I first started, I threw out diving nutrition, nutrition counseling, then business coaching. And then the business coaching took off. And then I kind of threw out this program. Let me see what happens. And like randomly built a program like in real time to where like it was a 12-week course and like each day I'd create the material. And so it's been very, very organic and it's been really great feedback. So I wanted to create it again.
Nice, nice. Just a side note here, I'm noticing we have a comment from Joyce, and Joyce is saying how she really likes your website design. So she just wanted to give you a little compliment.
And I love my website design. That's like, one of my passions has been like making a really great website. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's like my little baby, my second little baby.
Yep. Yep. All right. So how can people find you? Can they reach out to you through your website, through email? How do
My
you?
gosh, anywhere. I'm pretty reachable. So Facebook, I'm pretty active on a lot of the dietitian Facebook groups. So you may have seen me comment there. You can find me on Facebook. I don't usually accept people unless I'm like actually in-person friends, but you can find me on Facebook. I'll message you back. And otherwise, all of my handles are Maggy the dietitian, whether it's LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, website, email. So it's kind of like a Maggy the dietitian. You'll find me. So that's how.
Well, it's easy to remember, easy to
Yeah.
follow. Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and providing this valuable service to all of our members. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I had a good time.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. And to everybody who's watching, we have more to come through the end of the year, and I'll be posting the November lineup very shortly. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye,
Bye-bye.
y'all. Thank you, Catherine.